from the information to an action item. Do I have a motion I want to introduce at that time?
Is there a second? Second. Okay, so this has already happened, so I'm not sure we need to act.
The motion.
So do you want to discuss it, or is there a particular action that you want to take?
The motion I'd like to introduce would be after our last meeting, we had public comment.
Right.
I realized that one of the public comments that we had from the family, the wording that we created for our sibling clause we were working on for the last couple of months was exclusionary for a family. The motion that I'd like to introduce would be to further clarify that sibling clause for Adams District, which I know we have some information for, which we presented at that time as well. So it's a motion I'd like to introduce. We'll go along with that discussion as that information is presented.
Okay, so we have someone who would like to amend the agenda to change action on item 10 from information to action. And we have a second. Is there any other discussion? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? And then our next item is the February 13th meeting minutes, which were distributed in advance. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Any discussions? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? All right, our next item is to elect a vice chair. This is one of the requirements of the new charter system model. And the vice chair basically would manage the meeting in my absence. And this term would serve until the end of June. And then we would have the opportunity to elect another vice chair for the next school year. Everyone is eligible except for the principal and the students. So would anyone like to move someone, or would someone like to volunteer to be the vice chair?
So overwhelming.
I believe we return to this item when we have more people votes. We are going to need someone to establish that. Although Deborah Davis has let me know she went in a little bit late, and she also let me know that she would not run the vice chair. So I guess that leaves us in Deborah. Dr. Baptist. All right, well, we'll ask him about that when he gets here. All right, our next item is a discussion item, which is for Bruce Bickey to update us on the capacity.
I believe since the last update, we took our tour of Cambridge High School building. And, Ron was kind enough to set up a tour of Milton High School and Cambridge High School for the capacity committee. And we had an enjoyable morning, mid-afternoon, touring these schools and seeing the facilities that are in the current ed specs and some of the opportunities that we hope that we can incorporate into our plan forward. I believe I reported the last meeting that we are deficient in many of the ed specs here at Riverwood, and that our hope is to convince the school board to fund the rebuilding of Riverwood rather than just another addition. So the tours really kind of drove that home to all of us that a 21st century high school has facilities in really every department, especially noticeable in the labs and the science department, of things that our kids are really being deprived of. And we continue to put pressure on our students and on our teachers to strive for higher test scores and whatnot, and yet we are holding back. I feel like we don't have the facilities that will enable us to reach all those goals. So my intention is to speak along with have as many supporters there as possible at the March 21st school board meeting about efficiencies that we have here at Riverwood, and continue to make our push to not just add on to our building, but to completely rebuild our building to bring it up to the ed specs. Where we are. Questions?
So you, Patrick worked with the.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I left that out, sorry. Then after that meeting, we were fortunate that we had another meeting set up with Patrick Berg, whose title is Director of Operations.
Something along those lines.
Something along those lines. Anyway, the bottom line is he basically is he doesn't control the purse strings, but he can make recommendations as to what needs to be done. Patrick was very receptive to our ideas. Our committee, of course, includes engineers and people who really know what they're talking about. Except the only challenge in talking with Patrick or any school official about this right now is that there continues to be this cone of silence over exactly what their plans are. He kept encouraging us to keep doing what we're doing, and led us to believe that a lot of the recommendations that we were making were things that were under consideration, but that he couldn't speak any real specifics. But it felt like within 30 days, the shroud of secrecy would be lifted, and they would kind of reveal what their plans were. And really, the plans of whether Herds Ferry would be moved to a new location, or Herds Ferry would stay in its current location, whether they would be treated as two projects, or whether they would be treated as one big project. Of course, we were pushing for it to be one big project, and again, with the support of my committee members who understand construction, pointed out all the areas of savings that would occur if it was dealt as one project. We talked about traffic flow, we talked about community input, we talked about the ed specs. We covered everything. So I believe Patrick, my personal belief, Patrick will be a supporter of what we're asking for. But at the end of the day, it comes down to the school board. And there are 7 school board members representing 7 different districts, all of which have needs. So kind of my last effort before speaking to the school board is I'm going to try and get around to some of the other deficient high schools so that I can make the case not just for Riverwood, but for all those high schools that are not up to ed specs. So I'm going to set that up next week. Some of my committee members will be able to do it. So I think we're near the bottom when it comes to high schools, but there are other high schools that have needs similar to ours as well. So we're not going to get very far from this screaming loudness. We're going to get far from convince the school board that Riverwood is deserving as well as other high schools. So that's our plan.
Question.
Yes.
How much time do you have on the agenda is this where you have to sign up? And
Yes,
get
yeah.
something?
3 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes.
I don't know. Someone would be
Yeah.
3 and 5.
So
Are handouts allowed to the school board, like if we prepare a packet to hand out to them as part of our,
I think, yes, I think you could. Well, what I'm hoping is that either that night or soon thereafter, there will be an announcement made about what the intention is. Basically, Herds Ferry stays, Herds Ferry
right,
goes.
right.
And when that happens, then we'll be able to have a strategy of how to move forward Generally, what I would like to do is go into that meeting, speak to the board, and then do follow-up is what I found to be the most efficient, based on kind of what happens at that meeting, the reaction. Of course, you are allowed to not corner them after the meeting. It's none of it. So I think afterwards we'll meet the committee, hopefully maybe have a government council special meeting or something, and talk about what we want to do. Because we want to move quickly. We're not going to have a very big window to make our case once they announce what their experience has been.
Let me make sure I understand what you said. So are you thinking that there'll be some sort of recommendation about first scenario on the 21st?
Possibly. Basically, I mean, I don't know, but from reading between the lines or whatever with Patrick, my belief was that within 30 days of that meeting, you might hear something. Well, if they're going to announce something, they're going to do it in 14 days.
And then repeat what you said about then the governance council. Do you need to get to that?
Well, what we're just addressing the question about follow-up. I believe after that meeting, I'll get the capacity committee back together right away, and we'll talk about, okay, what's the next step based on what we heard at that meeting. If there is any breaking news, then I would like to quickly get back to the governance council, report what I believe is our best action. Because at that point, I think it's better if it's not just the capacity committee speaking with the whole governance board.
Any other questions? Did you take pictures of the other schools?
There are some pictures that one of the members of the facility we took with cell phone.
Okay.
One of those are going to be out.
Yeah. We did get maps, and we did take some pretty good notes of things. To me, for me, the most glaring examples were, of course, just plenty of room for teachers to collaborate and meet, plenty of room in the cafeteria, plenty of room in the hallways, and just, the lab facilities. I mean, the facilities that, from language labs to science labs, they're just amazing. And to see the kids engaged in these activities that we just can't offer here, it was an eye-opener. And I think it's going to help us make our case.
If I could add, I think one of the things that really struck me once again, coming from a school that had some advantages, was the wireless network and the things that can be done from a technological standpoint that we are so handicapped with here. Our network system services about 500 at one time, and that's if it's working. And if you read the emails that come out to all Riverwood, it's usually not working. We always have trouble with the wireless system or the servers and whatnot. And so it's a nightmare here from a technological standpoint for kids to do research, to count on testing, for example. We're going through all the spring batteries of testing from EOCTs to APs and IBs, and everything is now electronic testing, basically. We don't have the capacity to do our testing electronically because we don't have, one, a reliable system, and two, enough points that students can test in the numbers that they have to. Plus, we're handicapped with our schedule and the class period limitations that we have, because most tests conform to different time standards than we're used to. So we have to also jerry-rig the day for those that are being tested typically. So it's really hard, and I don't know that computer labs are the answer. That's one thing that they've been doing in Fulton County, having a certain number of computer labs outfitted with computers. Maybe it's more of an integration of computers in every classroom that could be the answer, along with maybe some identified areas where testing could be done near the media center and whatnot. But it's just, we are so far behind, it is really almost shocking when you look at the new school facilities and what they're doing with those facilities in contrast to the handicaps that our students operate within. And one other just little factoid to keep in your mind, I asked Mr. Nissen, our engineering teacher, to do a little kind of quiet study with some of the students and take some measurements and check out the room sizes and contrast our current existing room sizes with the educational specifications. And there are general classrooms that have a certain class size. There are labs that have different requirements because the nature of the activities that go on there. And when he did it, he found only one classroom was within 95 in the entire building, in all classrooms, labs, general classrooms, dedicated classrooms. Only one was in compliance at a 95% level of what the educational specifications were. So the movement of students, the placement of students, the activities of students have changed a great deal since the early 1970s. And when we're working with teachers to provide the latest and the best quality instruction, and some of that involves movement, small group activities, other kinds of activities, we are really against the wall, literally, in terms of what flexibility we have, because we're not even close to the standards that exist, in new schools. And when you look at the new schools, and you think as a teacher, boy, what I could do with a classroom like that, it's amazing. And I think the classroom teachers that were with us on the visits were, kind of drooling, what I could do and looking at the applications they themselves could implement. So it's not just that and you keep saying, it's not just narrow hallways and one-way traffic and issues like that. It's a whole variety of issues that, the world has kind of marched on, and we need to do some serious catching up. Not for any other reason than our kids. They really are not getting the same advantages that other kids are. And I understand somebody's got to be the old school and whatnot, but us, Chattahoochee, Centennial, Roswell, and those three high schools are all more recent than Riverwood, and North Springs all have deficits that need to be addressed over the next decade by the school board.
So the good news, I think, for us is we are on the list, and clearly on the list for renovation. So I understand the primary agenda is to change that from a renovation to more of a rebuild.
Yes.
And is there still an interest in trying to move us up on a timeline, or is that not as critical now?
That's critical, but again, it kind of, we just kept getting a little pushback there because until they decide what they're doing with Hearns Ferry, it wasn't time to push for that yet.
So maybe as a suggestion, Bruce, if you're going to put together some sort of case, maybe if you just send it out to the governance council in case as a result of this conversation, our teachers from their vantage point, our students from their vantage point, if there's things we want to add to that, that would give us an opportunity to.
Sure.
Given that this will be obviously a little bit about that. The other thing I would just add is that I did some calculations that I shared with the governance council on the most recent projections that we were given, and they appear to be lower than would have occurred from simply taking out the out-of-zone students over time. And I understand that I can't get, I've not been able to get my questions answered about this, just to be very frank, but my presumption is that the prior projections from last year presumed that we would continue adding out-of-zone students at the same rate that the seniors graduated, so it basically stayed constant. The new projections are considerably lower because they presume we add 0 out-of-zone students in future years. However, I did the math to sort of see what that would do to the projections, and the numbers we've been given are even lower than that, which would mean that somehow they've reduced their assumptions about the growth within the attendance zone. So I have sent that information to Gail Dean. I talked to her yesterday, and she's going to try to help us better understand what's going on with that. But again, I do just want to make that point that the projections the system has given us presume no out-of-zone students after this year. Now, that doesn't mean that we might not get to a point where we can recommend that we accept some, but there should be no comments given by anybody to anyone who is out of our attendance zone that there is an opportunity for them to situations where people make plans based on the assumption that they're going to turn out that that's not going to happen. So we just need to be really cautious about that going forward.
Martha, just for clarification, out of zone, out of district. Out of zone means outside of the Riverwood attended zone,
But in full.
but in full account.
All right, anything else on the capacity committees? Okay, we're going to move down to the communications committee, and here Martin has an update.
We had a very good meeting last week. Probably 13, 14 people attended and were very enthusiastic and getting better communications up and running here. That's not to say that all the people who have put in lots of time and lots of effort have not done a good job. They have, and we want to respect the time they put into it. But the county offers no help in terms of trying to better understand the platform which the website is built upon. So let me tell you that as far as the people who stepped up to really dig their teeth in and get this happening, Lynn Miller has offered to be the go-to person for all communication avenues. So in terms of all the booster clubs and all the student activities and things that the students want to put out there, would eventually end up in Lynn Miller's lap. And then she, along with Beth Hawks, will further implement the platform that Fulton County has given us. And hopefully, June Campbell will also assist in access to that website. I know Mr. Tesh is working on seeing how Lynn could get access to that. So Lynn has been working for the last 4 years on the website, and also has been working with RAA on their website, and has lots of familiarity with the school, as well as the website. She's also going to other high schools to see what they're doing, particularly Milton. Evidently they have a really, really good website that is easy to use and very inviting to the reader. Beth Hawks does web design for a living. She's a parent here. She has a 9th grader, and she's very enthusiastic in helping out as a web designer. She has over 25 years of field experience. And then Tazenia Pinchback-Lamar is our navigational guru. She loves figuring out that piece of the puzzle in terms of all the different groups having navigational pieces on that one website. And then Susie Murphy and Christine Fisher will also help Lynn on revitalizing newsletters that go out. And what we're looking for, instead of having 10 different clubs pushing out to their members, having a one go-to spot that everybody can access, and then click on links to get to where they need to go and to where they need to go. And what Tazini was saying is we should be able to find what we need within 2 clicks. Some of our considerations, what Mr. Tesh said most beautifully is we need to develop a source of information for Riverwood that is creative and innovative in 21st century. And that needs to come from one person. That's not to say that she's doing all the work. She's, this will take a lot of people helping Lynn out, but she will be our go-to person. And we're working with the county on how to possibly get some support in terms of using the web design. I know when June has tried to do something a little extra to the platform that is actually there. I mean, she's still using the platform. The county has come back to her and said, no, you can't use that. So there's some communication gap with the county as well. So the first things to be addressed would be the front page of the website, along with all the various newsletters, and revamping those so that they're accessible. we're also talking about, the different types of calendars we can use, and somebody was saying that, certain calendars, if you click on that, then you can immediately download that to your software, which so we probably won't have a meeting next week, but I'll certainly be in touch with, Lynn, especially after she reviews some schools next week. And then we'll move forward.
So much for organizing that. Any questions for Claire about
Is there, you talk about, besides just the website, the pushing of press out to
So we're thinking of a weekly newsletter that encompasses all the subgroups, and, keeping in mind, for our Hispanic community in particular, we need, for those who don't have computers at home or access to the internet, we'll obviously need to do something in paper as well. But in terms of pushing out, we're looking at a weekly newsletter.
but I'm thinking like the Sand Springs Reporter, the newspapers, that keep feeding them, little news tidbits.
Right, so Ann Boatwright was not able to make the meeting, so I will be in touch with her, regarding that. She's our media specialist.
What we need, if I can piggyback on that, is more, we need probably two positions. We need somebody to push information out to the media and collect information and assemble it in a way that the media doesn't have to do anything, but just put it in, basically. That you have to write the stories for media these days because sometimes they're busy and get off track. So if you do that, you get much better press. And you almost need a sports information director, and that's probably our athletic director, in terms of feeding information much in the same way to the media, with prep stories and pictures and photographs sent with them so we can get them in the newspaper. I'd rather see 5 pictures of various sport activities and kids getting recognition along with the academic successes of kids on a regular basis. But it takes a little time and energy to do it.
These are that Ann Boatwright's role, and she's done a pretty good job of writing stories and getting them to the press. I guess the question is how much of which one we pay for and how much is volunteer. Yeah. I suppose that's something that we should talk about.
I've only been here for 6.5 weeks, I don't know, but I'll try to find out.
I do believe her role is she's paid for her role.
She is.
I think the issue is she can only push out what she knows about, and so making sure that everybody knows to get information to Ann. If she gets something, I think she's been very successful in getting placement and recovery. But people need to know, I think a lot of what Claire is addressing is simply the fact that because there hasn't been a well-organized structure, people have started doing their own thing. And so I know I get 3 or 4 newsletters from different groups, most of which has a lot of the same information, and it's very confusing. So anyway, our communications committee is much needed.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, anything else for Claire?
Yes,
We use the same platform.
they are, and I'm not sure if they're, somehow they're able to be more creative with it.
Anything else? All right, so we have about 10 minutes for Mr. Tesh to just give us, I'll just reiterate, that last month we discussed the fact that this request is preliminary, but I did, since it hasn't been submitted, I did think the governance council should have just a quick update on the assumptions and discretionary things that were included in the draft budget that was submitted, and then this is going to come back to us around the May, June timeframe once it's clearer what our resources are.
Yeah, the item is in your packet, should be in your packet, and I took a few things out of it because it was just the allocations of personnel and the allocations of dollars to streamline it for us this morning. This is locked down. We can't change it if we want to at this point. The district really has kind of a 2-pronged process for budgeting the school budgets. The first step is to develop a preliminary look. They're doing that fairly early this year. They used to wait a couple weeks later, almost a month and a half later. So we were really under the gun. I was very much under the gun to put together at least distribution of the funds funds that were allocated so that they could have an idea. The reason the district wants this is because then they can see where we are planning to spend our money and how our personnel is currently divided, if it looks as if we have needs. If retirements and separations are made known to the district, they come back and look at the personnel sheets that we supplied them and the number of positions that we have in order to prepare for the surplusing and transferring process for teachers, basically. There are two budgets, and the first several pages that you see are all cost center personnel budget allocations, basically, along, and it says earned. So the first page there, you see an area for teachers. You see how many are earned and how many are used. The used column reflects what information I provided to them so that the budget would balance. The top line says grades 9 through 12, all general ed teachers. This year we're allocated 62, and we plan to use 62. And on the last pages of the document that you have is a description of how teachers are used by department, and it all totals up in general ed to 62 teachers. Actually, the 62 that we were allocated this year is one teacher less than what we have currently in the building. So we had to trim our allocation a little bit in several areas to meet the budget needs. Now, I want to caution you as you look at the information here, you'll see different allocations in different areas. For example, the number of general ed teachers are on the front page. You'll see special ed teachers, how many we receive in various categories. I don't want to get into the weeds and talk about what category 3 is as compared to category 2. Maybe one of our members would want to talk about that a little bit more. But I think for our purposes, it just shows you the allocations and what we have used. If you go 2 or 3 pages into it, I guess it's actually the 4th page, and these are not numbered. You get into the non-personnel budget. These are the dollars that are not used for personnel. They're used for instructional materials, supplies, things of that nature. And to determine what our needs were in this area, what I did was sit down with each of the department chairs and their supervising assistant principal, requesting what it was that they wanted or needed for next year for their instructional supplies and different needs. Along with that, I met with other individuals who are responsible for budgetary oversight, administrators, our head custodian, what do you need for supplies and various items to drive the budget. And basically, from the information called from each of them, and kind of a brokering process, the figures that are entered here, and I'm sorry it doesn't show up as good as it does in dark areas, but those are closed cells. Those are the dollar amounts that basically they asked for. I don't think anybody was denied funds that they sought as a department chair or an area person. So those are the budgets per department, per area that you see that are non-personnel dollars that we have. There are a couple pages of that information, and you can see again, they're distributed in not only line items, but by budget area. So you'll see areas for special education, various categories, ESOL. You'll see areas for school administration, application, athletics, security, areas like that. Those are the appropriations that are tentatively scheduled in the preliminary budget for those areas. Could they be changed? Sure, they could be changed. But this is pretty much the pattern that we've had for the last year or so. There are no dramatic changes in this budget. I felt my role as interim principal was basically to keep the ship going in the direction that it had. So there's really not a whole lot of variance in terms of budget allocations for non-instructional dollars. Now there's going to have to be a few little changes though when we open the budget again and make final recommendations that will come to the Governance Council. At that point, I'm going to shift some monies around in here and recommend support for those areas. Among the things that we'll shift money for that I can tell you right now, we're probably going to shift some resources to support the position of website coordinator. That should be remunerated as a position, and we need to reflect that in our budget. So we'll have to move some dollars to do that so that an independent contractor such as a lip builder could be paid from the budget to provide service to the school as the director coordinator of our website. If we have other positions that we feel also need to be considered, then we might need to see where the money's going to come from and how can we convert that money. My guess is, and my druthers would be, that I don't move it from the existing department budget, but take it from the overall school dollars that are there for instructional supplies, which is a very big category. You'll see in instructional materials and supplies, I think it's in the first page of that series, is listed at about $63,000. So any monies that we probably add for positional responsibilities, for website direction, coordination, or other kinds of needs, we probably lower that allocation to a little bit lower level. That dollar amount, by the way, is used for all the school paper, supplies that we use. We don't charge those off to departments and such. Those are strictly coming from the general office allocations. The last several pages you see that are in columns like this, these actually reflect the teacher allocations that add up to the 62 or 3, whatever the number was, 62, for general education and for the allocations for various programs like TAG, like special ed, or any other program that's in there. And what it means, for example, if you look, I think that section starts with 912 general ed at the top, and it's got math, English, and so forth down there. For example, the math, right now we're looking at 11.1 teachers for mathematics next year. We don't know exactly how many math teachers we're going to need. We're in the process of just finalizing student requests for courses. Once that's completed, then we'll start to figure out how many actual teachers and equivalent teachers we're going to need. And then we'll revise these figures to reflect the real world of what we need for 2014 for next year. So this is very much a work in progress. When the final budget is developed, that's when I'll come to you and we'll have accuracy in terms of the number of teachers per department. These are general ed teachers. That doesn't mean, for example, and I see a couple of you looking at various disciplines, it doesn't mean that, looking for social studies here, don't find it. It doesn't mean that's all the social studies teachers we have. Some might be out of the magnet budget, some might be out of the TAG budget, and they're differentiated based on program costs. So it gets fairly confusing, but if you add them all up, it should reflect roughly what we currently have. So.
Okay, very mindful of our time because we have a guest coming to talk about the fiscal selection process, and I want to make sure that we are able to have time on that. I do just want to make sure that the administration is aware that this governance council approves the budget before the final is submitted, so that's please make sure we allow time for those recommendations to come here before they have to be submitted back to the citizens.
That should be happening. The only concern that I have was that when I requested information about when the budget should be opened up, it looks like June is the month that that's going to happen. That's after graduation, post-graduation, so be ready for a definite meeting in June probably to do finance.
Martha, can I just make a request part of that? Is it possible to get this electronically for the Governance Council to review a little more in depth? And then, especially as it relates to all of the lab issues and the lab supplies, is there a way to really isolate how much we're investing in lab equipment, going back to our deficiencies, and get a better understanding of where we have sufficient funds, where we really don't? And I know we can't necessarily affect that, but that then ties into the PTSA Foundation's budgets for next year in terms of funding that we may need to supplement.
For lab, it would be very, first of all, the first question was, can you get it electronically? No, this information is available administratively via computer, and it's read-only at this stage. You have to have rights to have access to the information. I can supply this kind of information from the budget. This will not change over the next 2 or 3 months. It's not in that level of detail in the district or the school-wide budgets. The only information I can provide would be through department chairs in terms of how the anticipated revenue that they receive would be divided among lab teachers. For example, how much goes to physics, how much goes to chemistry, how much goes to biology, how much goes to broadcast video, how much goes to this. That would be department chair's decision with respect to their departments, how it's actually split up. And I don't know if they have that down to this point. Those would be the people that would provide that kind of insight, and maybe a dialogue with those individuals would be helpful, or a rough budget to pay for that. But I can't pull it off of this document.
Okay, so we'll look for perhaps a conversation in May about what some choices we might want to make.
Ms. Wilson, Parent-Teacher Conference is about to begin in the College and Career Center. Thank you.
Are there any other questions on this at this time?
I was going to mention flex position is right now, we still have 2 AAs planned, and that is constant. We're not changing it. That's how Chris used the flex position last year, and that's what's in the budget, the preliminary budget right now. Flex position is an extra position given to the principal to use in whatever way can best benefit the school. And that's the decision that was made last year. And again, in the spirit of trying to continue what had been the tradition here, that's still in that particular slot.
All right, so let me just point out, we are 5 minutes behind schedule. We did have a request to put the graduation update back on the agenda. We did talk about that last month. So I would just ask if there's any changes since last month.
6 tickets will be given to each graduate for their families. And a couple things the committee has done that I think you're going to like. We're really focusing the commencement ceremony on the seniors and graduates this year. We're doing, we pared it down in terms of some of the roles and responsibilities, and basically, in the past, the valedictorian had given a speech, and then 2 other speeches were given that were selected by audition. The valedictorian and the salutatorian both will give addresses, or will have the option to give addresses at commencement. 1 audition, that's a little change. We're also going to involve all the class officers, the senior class, in the ceremony itself, taking adults and administrators out of giving some of the information at commencement, allowing the senior class officers to talk about the achievements of the class and some of the other ceremonial roles that go on. I was surprised to find the senior class officers had no role in the ceremony in past years, and there were a lot of administrative talk kinds of things. So we're pulling that out and giving that responsibility to the seniors. And lastly, we're introducing a new concept this year. We're going to recognize the Riverwood scholars by asking them to come up to the stage during the ceremony and receive an award for being the top 10 students. So each of the top 10 students, from an academic standpoint, will be recognized, introduced, and we will comment on where they were in college, maybe a few words about each one, and get some kind of an award that they can keep for their lifetime. So that's what's called something symbolic of Riverwood. But that'll be the top 10. They'll be introduced alphabetically, except for the valedictorian and the salutatorian. So hopefully that will be a very good tradition that we will continue on in years past.
I heard that you said the valedictorian and salutatorian have an option of giving a speech and then one to audition. Usually the senior president gives a speech. Is that still in? The
senior president didn't give a speech last year unless it was the speech that was involved with the achievement of the class of 2012 or 13. But that's the speech that I think you're referring to, and that's the same. It's just we're adding some other ones, whether it's turning the tassel. I think I saw a mime in the audience do that. Things like that also are roles that would be there. So no, we're not taking that away. We're actually embellishing the responsibilities for the other officers.
Have we thought for families that are large, people that may have 3, 4, 5 siblings, are there any allowances made for additional tickets for people with less than
In terms of parity, we felt it best to go with 6 tickets. The size of the auditorium at, the arena is limited. I wish I could do that. I can't. We're going to make arrangements for streaming video, certainly for
That's
people.
my next question.
Yeah, that's planned, and I know when we went to the site as a committee, that was one of the features that we wanted to take advantage of, and we'll be doing some video streaming. And if there are tickets available beyond the 6, I'm entertaining some kind of a lottery system, perhaps, for those that might want to apply for additional tickets. There won't be that many additional tickets, but I think that would be the fairest next step in terms of getting tickets out to those who might have a need for extra tickets.
So when you say video streaming, are you saying on site or something to watch somewhere else?
I don't. It would be somewhere else in all likelihood, because I don't think there are positions in the arena or in the lounge area outside of it that really are adaptable for that kind of thing. I'll check on it, just double check. But when we took our tour of the facilities, there's enough room for the graduating class to stage before the ceremony begins. But beyond that, there's really not television monitors except in the lobbies when people are out during intermissions or things like that. It would be hard to have people standing out in the lobby watching those monitors. So I think the practical answer is probably video streaming, other site. But if they do have a room or an area that we can put people and set up chairs, I certainly would be willing to do something along those lines. There will be. I just said I'd check into it as we make final arrangements.
Is there a way for, if families aren't using the 6 tickets, to turn them back in and make them available to families that are?
We certainly would make that overture to anybody who doesn't need the tickets, put them back, and then we'll reissue them with the lottery.
It's a shame to have them used.
I agree.
People can't go.
We don't want empty seats that
Right.
people have, folks that want to see it.
So the graduation committee will be working out that process and communication about that.
Hopefully using the new newsletter.
It's all up to you, Claire. Okay.
I just want
One question, in terms of the scholars or the top 10 students, is that solely based on GPA, or are we also looking outside the box and looking at the whole student?
We're looking at specific GPA as of the spring semester, because that's the one for the fall semester of last year. That's how the valedictorian and salutatorian are calculated, and that's the traditional way Fulton County and others select their top students, basically. So that's the factor that we're using. That may be something to consider for future years, but right now it will be strictly the GPA-based, total.
Top 10 students in general, or is it per qualification, or is it just the top 10?
Top 10,
Just the top 10.
yeah, strictly GPA. And if there's a tie at number 10, then we'll look at that too.
I just briefly wanted to say that the Santa Spring Mission had offered their bus for transportation to the local library. So if you can pass that information along, that's something that I guess as communication, we have to let them know. I believe there's about 8 people that fit in the bus that they have.
If you could just give me an email with the information and who to contact if you're interested, then you'll see that. That's a newsletter item that would be very helpful on the website posting.
And let me also ask, if that's not sufficient, then maybe you could help the committee think about some other ways to offer transportation for those families that might not have it, since it's not active schools. So we're still waiting for Karen Cox, so let's skip that item for now and just move to future agenda items. I do have a question. I do think either our April meeting or our May meeting should be in the evening. Does anybody have a preference as to which one we would move to the evening?
Maybe April to alternate, morning meeting this month, evening meeting next month.
Is that okay with everyone? Can we do the same day, just move it to 4:30? And then maybe we'll go back to the morning? Okay. Are there requested agenda items?
I think moving forward with back to a magnet, usually there's certain criteria for eligibility that have to work out as far as kids who come here and academic standards they have to maintain and things like that. So definitely that should be something on our radar, working with, Brandon Herbert, our magnet coordinator.
Do you think that's something we should look at changing for the 2013-14 school year, or are we thinking more long-term?
We're definitely starting for next year. Have something in place as these things come up, rather than having to react to these things.
So looking at the magnet criteria.
For eligibility and to maintain
To
them.
maintain eligibility. I don't know if everybody knows this, but those students who are in the magnet program are getting system transportation, and if they don't maintain the magnet requirements, they lose the ability to come and they go back to their home school, so therefore it is problematic. Let me just also interject on that point. We are going to be going through a strategic planning process as a council, and I anticipate that this question about what does the magnet program mean and what are the criteria to be in it, to get the magnet seal, I hope that those would all be things that we would be engaging the community in a discussion about and making some decisions. So, any other requests for agenda items? Okay, so with that, we'll move to item 10. Let me just share the information that's been provided. Discussion. Following the expansion of the definition of siblings to include those of graduating seniors, we went from 16 siblings to 18 siblings. Our total from out of the attendance zone at this point is 26. And I do just want to say again for the record that the Fulton County School System policy, the way that they interpret the state law that any employee can bring their child to the school district where they work, is that if you are assigned to a school and your child is of age to attend that school, that they can come to a school with you. And that actually is just managed by the front office. They go to the data clerk and those students are enrolled. So that's really not something that we have any purview over. So if one of these vacancies is filled by a teacher with a 9th grade student, they have the option to bring that 9th grade student. So this number may increase as late as June or August as more people are hired. So I just wanted to make sure everyone understood that phenomenon.
So are they included then in the 30 or?
The two that we know of are here, are on the sheet. There may be more. So the question of whether they're included in the 30 is sort of new since we didn't get 30. But I think our motion last time was that if we exceeded 30, then we would request that they not be. But since we didn't, then we don't need to exercise.
What happens if this number changes between now and the fall as people come and apply?
The application's closed.
But even if, let's just say the employee's children ratchets it up over 30.
Then I think,
and that's not
then I
likely
think
to
we
happen.
fall back on our vote, which is to go to the school system and say we don't think that the employees should count in the number of magnet spots that we were provided to have. So we already acted on that at the last meeting, so we don't need to. There, if we need to exercise it, is kind of the way I see it. Okay. Discussion on this topic. Let me also just point out that it has been requested, rightly so, that we receive something in writing regarding the out-of-district students, since that was only communicated verbally. So Karen Cox has submitted an official response to that, and as I understand this, the state law that we were operating under that allowed us to accept students from outside of Fulton County schools, which would include City of Atlanta, is excerpted below, and it specifically references charter schools. Since we are not a charter school next year, our school next year is not open to out-of-district students according to state law. So that's, at least for the school system, that is the final word on it.
Even though we are a charter system,
It specifically says charter school, so we're not a charter school.
but we are a charter.
No, not legally, not according to the school. We're not a system of charter schools, we're a charter system. So it would take somebody going back and requesting that this be changed.
So So, this seems to happen a lot, until we get information after the fact. You know, when we're making our decisions about whether to remain a charter school or not remain a charter school, we're sure that none of our flexibility will go away, that will go away, and now all of a sudden, we're being told after the fact, so I just think that's wrong.
And along those lines is the action item that I mentioned earlier. The motion that I have, well, the background of this is, like I said, at our last meeting, we had public comment from the family who, with the language drafted and with the staff report from us and the governance council of the county, that family would not be allowed to enroll a sibling. So the motion for discussion would be to enroll siblings for next year, regardless of address. Now, look at what that means. I asked our magnet registrar to come up with possible numbers for that, as to not, open floodgates and things like that. And it would be 4. And of those 4, 2 have indicated private school for next year. So really possibly only 2.
So we need a second on that motion. Is there a second? Can't talk about it, we just need a second. Okay. So I don't think that's our decision. I don't think we are allowed to do that. We can tell those families they can be enrolled, and the school system will tell us they cannot be enrolled. So my concern, and I want to hear from everybody, but my concern is we're just stringing these people along, and in the end, the answer is going to be no. Whether we are happy about that or not, that's nice.
What options are available to us, I guess, for dialogue with the county?
I think we've already had one. I don't think that this answer is no because they don't understand the problem. And the character has to address that.
I'm sorry, explain their situation again.
Families that have a sibling here who are currently and have an 8th grade living in another county like Holland. So therefore, the language that was crafted, we've been working for the last couple of months, would not apply for that family. What I'm suggesting is the motion would be to have the sibling regardless of address.
And what we're being told now is that state law, because we're no longer a charter school, will even allow us to.
There is no legal provision for us to accept students from outside. There has to be an MOU, there has to be a memorandum of understanding between the two school systems because we're basically taking their FTE away from them. So like a lot of things, it ultimately comes back to money. So there is no valid MOU because we are no longer going to be a charter school.
Only charter schools are allowed to accept. And is this a new law, the old law?
This is the provision that we've been using since we started including out-of system students.
So this is not a voted on situation, it's actually going to be a law change.
That's my understanding.
That's what I mean as far as that dialogue with the county about this. Would it be something that the governance council could pass and then have the county have the response to be that dialogue?
Well, we've got a motion, so everybody can vote on whether or not they want to do that. I'll just say my concern is these families need to focus on what they need to do for next school year. And I would be concerned about continuing to communicate to these families that this is an option when all the information that I have is that legally it is not an option. So I don't know. I think for the future, we can ask the school system if, as a charter system, they would be willing to try to get this rule changed. But between now and August, that's not likely to occur. So anyway, I'm just trying to state the facts. I think we all have our opinion about this, but I'm just concerned that if we voted to do what's been proposed, that's something that's not in our hands, and then we're just giving these folks more reason not to move forward with their decision that ultimately is going to have to happen.
I guess I'm speaking from the standpoint of exhausting all efforts on my part representing,
I understand,
you know,
yeah. I don't mean to be
kids,
critical.
of course, kids and families, and as much as younger siblings looking forward to all of their older siblings. My brother, he was here 2 years before I was. I guess I'm thinking from the standpoint of me being at middle school, 7th and 8th grade, hearing my brother talk about Riverwood, not everything that I was looking forward to.
In here, DeKalb County and Cobb County are mentioned. We actually in the past have MOUs with them.
Yes.
And were there any other counties besides this?
My understanding is we have one with the city of Atlanta, which, or actually, we never did have one with the city of Atlanta, but they accepted their students anyway. And then when we tried to establish a memorandum of understanding, they said no. That's why those students were not able to come.
But we have had one for Cobb and we have in the past. Right.
I'm sorry? So I think the provision is if once you're here, you're here. But we can't accept any unions. That's what all the charters, that's my understanding.
Karen's on her way in. She may be able to answer the question.
Question for Karen.
She's coming right now. I just saw her.
Is going to be, what else did we lose by putting up our charter?
So I think maybe that could be another agenda item. I'm just very worried about the time, since we did want to talk about council selection, but that would be another question.
We can get that on the next agenda. I'm firmly with Bruce on this. There's a whole lot of stuff that over the course of time has not been held out ahead of time. And there has been a tremendous amount of miscommunication or complete lack of communication.
I hear you. But I just have to say, as a messenger, I've been very frustrated. Because, we put forward, here's what we understand our role is, and then the day before a meeting, or in one case, the morning of the meeting at 7 a.m., we receive a call and say, no, that's no longer your responsibility. So I'm trying to move us along in the discussion, but I don't want to convey that I necessarily think this is a good situation that we're in. And I am also frustrated by it, but
Well, not just that, but the whole charter, the way that was sold.
the charter system.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so there's a motion on the table and a second. Are we ready to vote?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, what do you vote?
Would you like to repeat the motion?
The motion is to amend the definition of citizen to include regardless of address. Regardless of address.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say, raise your hands. Let's do this. All in favor? Get your hands up. All opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so let me just make sure I'm clear. What are we doing?
As I see it, we're just pushing back. I mean, for me, it's just another protest to the fact that we're finding out these things after the fact. I don't hold out a lot of hope that it's going to do any good, but I'm getting tired of finding out about who after we've already made our decision. So that's why I was.
For best case, officers would be unopposed and then the students would enroll. Worst case, this is another dialogue between us and the county as we work out the role as a governing council versus the county stuff that comes under our purview and stuff that doesn't.
Well, I think we already asked you a question, but I think we already have an answer. We're going to ask the question again, and we're going to get the exact same answer. The only reason I'm saying that is because one of the parents of the affected family is in the audience, and I do not want any other steps that they might have options to pursue. I would not want them to not take those steps because they believe that we are going to prevail. So I just want to be really clear about that. I don't think that's fair at all to indicate to someone in this situation that there is a likelihood that we will prevail. I don't believe that. But we will certainly
That needs to be. Is it a document, motion understanding, conversation?
well, I can ask how
Yeah,
the
that's not what
person
it, I know that's not what it said. Karen just did this.
No, there is no evidence.
Yeah.
So what is it that,
That's what I was
what is it that you would ask? Can I just ask, what is the next step on this?
Some level of communication, I think, is what we're looking for. My last question. That's a possibility.
Karen, I think we're going to have to reschedule. All the teachers and students have to. I'm sorry.
I love it, that's right.
Unless, I mean, there's no way you all can say.
I think that this is very important, very important.
All right, if you all can stay, I just did not
I'm
want to have
going
this
to make some
conversation.
arrangements if we could get you just a minute.
Okay, can we take a break for 5 minutes and the teachers can join us? Students, you are, we get them a pass?
We get a pass. I think you probably want to stay over here.
Okay. So Mr. Haynes looks.
No.
All right, so if you'd like to stay, we'll make
Yeah.
You're going to say something and give it to you, can't just different answer prior to.
But it's part of the
Tell
charter.
them in January that the charter goes through June. And everything that's included in there,
Charlotte's in that first.
And this year's term is next year. Yeah, I mean, it does. So Karen needs to, that's what Karen needs to answer the question.
and then what you have,
Yeah.
and that's what what we explained to everyone in the beginning was our charter rules were not changed. And now she's saying they're on, and then because it's in the rules, will not be in place. Right. But she's making a note that they're not accepting for this enrollment. We're saying one thing, they want something with the legal thing. And what's being meant is, you understand my two kids that have siblings. So, whoever's telling Ms. Cox something.
I thought that was your meaning.
What?
I thought that was your meaning. I thought you meant you wish they were here.
Yes.
For that purpose.
Yes. Let me tell you.
Why don't you know I'm proactive? I am proactive.
Well, you know, I started all the time when I was 13 years old in school, trying to get teamwork.
He's a getting several municipalities to work together on a singular game. It's not easy. Especially with our spring season.
I know.
All right. It's hard.
You may have to kind of scooch over it this way, I'm sorry.
This way. We're here.
Y'all just need to move.
Audience members, the
You wanna
speakers
see
in
me
this
move?
space, and you're welcome to come sit back here with us.
I would try to find
Teachers,
Yeah,
we're good?
scoot.
allow Fulton County to do
Can I scoot behind you
Okay.
so I can record this?
We'll go ahead and get started in that time. Ms. Cornway, is everybody here? All the council
Dr. Square
members?
is out of there. Is she coming back?
Yeah,
I think she has an open period.
she does. We're trying to find
Okay.
her.
Okay. All right.
Thank you for this opportunity to share with you an update on the principal selection process for Riverwood. I'm Karen Cox, Area Superintendent for the Central Learning Community. I want to introduce Dr. Rob Anderson, who's our Area Executive Director, who will work side by side with me through this process with you and your school community. So I'm going to go through some slides first that show the new process in Fulton County. We have changed the process significantly in the last year. And then I'm going to share with you some of the results from your survey that the community completed a couple of weeks ago. If you'll hold your questions, I'll get through and I promise to come back and answer any questions you may have, if that's okay. I think sometimes slides explain more as we go through. All right. Let's talk about the overview of the process. And this is really, there are two concurrent strands that are happening as we select a new principal anywhere in Fulton County. So on the far left, you see the beginning piece, which is to open up the positions that are available. For a pool process, we take applications for anyone interested in being a principal in Fulton County schools. We just had a posting for the position. It closed March the 1st. So we've done one wave of application acceptance, where people who are interested in being a principal have done that application. And I'm sorry, Martha, can you scooch that over to the right a little bit so they can see that left green box? Yes, thank you, that's good. The first wave, the concurrent waves are, one is what is the process that human resources, or as we call it now, the talent division, the process the talent division is taking. At the same time as the process is happening through my office with talent that is working directly with the school community. So the talent department does the job posting, they take the applications, they look at those applications, and at the same time, I am leading and you are completing the survey about the school. That came out and was posted on your website, letters will come to parents. So the survey is done. The next step is the focus groups here at the school that I will lead and Rob will help with. Parents, teachers, and students are involved in that focus group.
Please call for a brief period of quiet reflection.
The focus groups follow up on questions that are revealed from the survey. The whole process for the survey and the focus group is about what it is that you want and you believe is the best thing in your principal going forward. What are the characteristics, the traits, the competencies that you want to see in your new principal? So we're digging into the school community to look and see what it is you want. Do we need to stand for the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. This weekend is to bring you to a little shop of horror. There are 4 shows.
As the applications are submitted, HR does the gray column where they do the first screening of applicants. The first screening of applicants, there is a paper screening that involves looking at whether...
Yeah, you can't.
Thank you. Back to you, Joe. Hey, Jay, excellent. Now, the spring blood summit is tomorrow. If you are signed up to give blood, please ask your first period teacher for your blood drive pass. If you are only 16 years old, don't forget to bring your signed parental permission form with you to the blood drive on Wednesday. All donors can stop by the termination for your Chick-fil-A visit tomorrow morning before school. Please keep Mr. Page if you have any questions. And finally, come out and help out Riverwood Recycling Club this afternoon in your 410 right after school until 4:15. This does count for hours. And with that, Raiders, have a great day.
screening happens, and that's a much more rigorous level of screening that has ever happened in Fulton County. We take a score based on the application. It's statistically relevant. It goes through a whole process with our application processing system to give a fit score and to look at that person's candidacy for a Fulton County principalship. It's real important to understand we're looking at are they good enough for Fulton County at the district level. That's what's happening through HR and talent. So that whole gray bar from the score on the application through a phone interview that is held by members of the talent department with case studies, behavioral questions, all of the things to look at, is this person good enough for Fulton County? So that gray bar is happening right now for all of the applicants that applied for the principalship in Fulton County. Doesn't have anything to do with Riverwood at this point through the talent division. Is that real clear? All we've done thus far with Riverwood is the survey. And the next step that we'll do with Riverwood are the focus groups based on the survey results. Okay?
I'm sorry, when you say has nothing to do with Riverwood.
It has nothing to do with Riverwood. We're looking for principal fit for Fulton County. Are they good enough to work in Fulton County, period?
But these are people who applied for the Riverwood position.
No. They applied for the principalship in Fulton County.
Hold that thought.
Okay? They applied for the principalship in Fulton County. At the end of this month, March 28th and 29th, we will do the blue column, where we will hold principal fit interviews, where our AEDs, the area superintendents, we all work together from all 4 learning communities with talent to do interviews and performance assessments for those candidates that made it through the gray bar. They're good enough for Fulton County based on the first screening. And then we look at them for a deeper look, a deeper evaluation of their candidacy as a principal in Fulton County. After that happens, I've gone back and taken the survey and the focus group information as well as the profile of Riverwood, your school data, what various indicators, sort of the environmental scan that you all will work with as you begin your new Cohort 1 process. What is it about Riverwood that you want and need in a principal? Then we do the second round interviews. We take from the blue bar those good enough for Fulton County and match. I look at all of those potential candidates and say, here's what we have from Riverwood, all the information we have from Riverwood, and based on the competencies that we see in the blue, we find the 2 to 3 very best candidates for Riverwood. And we bring them to Riverwood for specific interviews with your team. And I'll go into some of the questions you have about your role and your charter's requirements in just a minute. After school fit, and there's a big presentation, it's a lengthy interview, but it's only 2 to 3 candidates. If you've sat through an interview for a principal in the past, you know in the past we've brought 6 or 7 and 2 or 3 of them might not really be a good fit at all. The experience I've had thus far in hiring principals for our learning community and that all of my colleagues as area superintendents have had is that this process is very good at narrowing down to the 2 to 3 candidates that are a good fit. In fact, in all 3 that I hired this year, my interview committees all said at that point, any of the 3 are good enough for our school. We do think that this one is the best fit. So we feel really good about the process that we have now to bringing really good candidates to the table. After that school fit interview, I take all the information that I get from the interview and I make a recommendation to the superintendent. It is my responsibility to make a recommendation to the superintendent. It is my responsibility as your area superintendent to take everything I get from the Riverwood community to say, I think this person is the best fit based on all of the feedback we've gotten. The very final 2 steps are that person goes before Dr. Avosa and Dr. Murray, our deputy superintendent, for a final candidate interview. If they pass muster with Dr. Avosa and Dr. Murray, they go to the board for final approval. It is the Board of Education's final approval that gets you a new principal. Okay? Concurrent strands, and at the very end, everything comes together to bring you good candidates, get your input, get your thoughts, get your choice, and then the recommendation is made to Dr. Avosa and then finally to the board. Okay? So that process is happening right now.
Can we ask questions or do you want us to wait?
If you can wait, if you can remember them, I think that would be best. So, your charter requires 2 parents and 2 teachers on the interview committee. That's a given. At that principal fit, at the Ridgeview principal fit, Riverwood principal fit piece, you will have 2 parents and 2 teachers. I'll work very closely with Mr. Tesh to select those 2 parents and 2 teachers from this council. We will have more, okay? But there will be 2 of you from the parent group and 2 of you from the teacher group. You have a request that no direct appointment be made. That is a request, but it is not a requirement. The superintendent can make a direct appointment. Most likely will not, but he can. All right, here are the competencies that we as a district have identified that are necessary for a successful principal. There's been a lot of work around this, a lot of feedback from current principals in Fulton County, from current community members in Fulton County. These are all the competencies that we think principals should have. There are 8 of those. They all go back to the Leadership Essentials. You may have seen the Leadership Essentials, the 4-piece. I'll show you, there's a slide that has those on there. This is important because this is the information that was behind the questions on the survey. Those of you who participated in the survey had questions about what do you want in your principal? What do you see as necessary in your principal? And they all derive from these competencies. You had 176 participants in the survey. The vast majority were parents. A small number, almost 40 teachers, participated in the survey.
So the students did not participate in the survey?
No. There's a choice of parent and staff on the survey. They could have if they marked parent or staff, but there's no choice for students.
But the students didn't get the survey?
It went out as a link to families. So here are the results of your survey. This is the Leadership Essentials down at the bottom. Creating values for our customers, embraces change, leads by example, develops on capability. The results of your survey show these are the top qualities your new leader must possess. High expectations, trustworthy, understanding of strategic planning, and an effective communicator. So those are the top qualities from your survey. So let's dig a little bit deeper into what that means. This is a slide that just shows those same things. These are the expectations and the results of the survey that show you the number 1 choice was the question number 2, high expectations. Sets high expectations for staff, teachers, self, and students.
Can you just remind everybody how this question worked?
The question worked in the way that you had to select from those 8 competencies, what have you ranked them 1 through 8. So more people, if you look under column 1, 31% of the respondents picked question number 2 or statement number 2 as their number 1 choice. That was their top priority. And then if you go down to number 4 for trustworthy, 29.4%. So those were very close in terms of the top choices, which is no surprise. You know, it varies among schools, but those are typically way up there at the top with almost any school survey.
Thank you.
Does that make sense? And then we went down through that with the 2s to 3s, 4s, and so on. As we looked at survey comments, here are the things that you all said it's important for a new principal at Riverwood to understand. What are some things that are big issues at Riverwood? None of these are a surprise. None of these are a surprise given the conversations you all that I've heard from you all, that I've heard from the community, that a principal needs to understand that this is a very diverse, beautifully diverse student population. You have overcrowding issues. You have 1,700 students in a building built for 13 something. You have a very involved parental group. There's a lot of faculty support, and there's a need for faculty support. And that we have high academic expectations for all students. For all students. So here are the comments that drove us to these things. I won't read through all of them, but you see that there are lots of comments that people thought were important for the new principal to know. Working in a diverse community, understanding the diverse student population in terms of socioeconomics, ethnicity, all of the pieces that make Riverwood the beautiful quilt that it is, if you will. Overcrowding, future student growth, how to handle it, optimal learning environment, giving this, having the plan for 2 to 5 years, how do we deal with overcrowding, that somebody needs to come in and have an understanding, work with the faculty, students, and community to address this issue as your new school is added, as your school is either added onto or rebuilt. Good, strong parental involvement, and that communication is a key. Honest, effective communication, exchange, input, reduce some of the bureaucracy. Those are all comments that came through. Faculty support, faculty endorsement, faculty encouragement. Very strong faculty that needs to have an advocate in the principal's position. Team approach. Those are all comments that came through. Continue to focus on the IB. That's a very important part of what Riverwood is, but the diploma program in particular, but also think about the fact that the Riverwood is not just the diploma program. That it is an extremely diverse school with students that have needs at all levels, and that all levels of students get the support and the challenge that they deserve. All right, I'm going to go back to the slide with the overview. Let's take questions, comments, thoughts. I know we had a question here.
Yeah.
I'll get you.
Yeah, Deborah.
Yeah, thank you, Deborah.
We're currently in the blue section, I think you said.
No, we're actually in the green and gray.
In the green section, but let me say it differently. I think you said that you thought the blue section would be completed by the end of March.
That's correct.
Okay, that's
we will have those principal fit interviews March 28th and 29th.
That's what I have here.
Okay.
How long is the entire process usually? How long did it start from the beginning, and how long do you think it will take us to get to the board approval?
Our goal is to have a principal approved at the May board meeting.
May board.
Yes.
Okay, and you also mentioned, it's probably on here and I don't see it, at some point in time the school gets involved in a focus group
Yes.
session, and I don't see that on there, I'm sorry.
It's in the green.
Oh, okay, it's back. Gotcha.
And I have a date that I'm going to propose to Mr. Tesh.
Okay.
We just need to work around, I don't know what's happening at Riverwood to make sure we get a day that parents can be here, students are available, faculty's available. It'll be after school. We'll pull students during the school, right at the very end of the school day, and then we'll do parents, faculty, then parents, back to back to back.
So the focus group will be, I'm trying to get all mine out, so then everybody else, so the focus group will be comprised of what we are looking for, or do we actually? Okay.
That's correct. From your survey results, those themes and the priorities that were listed at the end, we have prescribed questions that we ask around those competencies to dig a little deeper about what does that mean. You want a principal who's a faculty advocate, you want somebody who's a good communicator. What does that look like? What does that mean? So we have specific questions where we ask, dig deeper into those results.
Okay, so we've got two, this is my last question. That's when we're involved in the focus group selection of the school, and I guess Mr. Tesh will come up with a body of people that are going to be in that focus group, and then we're here again at the two-parent, two-teacher selection process.
In the yellow column.
In the yellow column.
That's
so
right.
We jump from the green, you do your thing in the gray and the blue, and we come back in again on the yellow.
That's correct.
And then again, Mr. Tesh will come up with, now probably those two parents and two teachers probably will also be comprised of the people that were here on the green section.
It could be.
Rebranded folks.
It could be.
Okay.
We'd like to have, the goal in all of that, the focus groups and the interview committee is to have a representative group of your school community.
Okay.
That we have the diversity, we have the new, the experience, that we look at a broad representation of people to represent your school in those important
So some
decisions.
kind of way we need to come up with some means of communicating with Mr. Tesh if a person, student, parent, or teacher wants to be involved in that.
Yes, if you're interested in, but there's no guarantee that your interest, there's no guarantee that your interest means you get selected. Because we're not going to have a focus group with 50 people.
Can't.
Or 12 people. We're going to have a focus group with 6 to 8 people.
Exactly.
Okay?
That's it.
So you have 3 points of contact, really. You have the survey, you have the focus groups, and then you have the school fit interviews. So good clarification.
Thank you.
Thanks, Deborah.
Can I just
Yes, sir.
ask, in the interest of time, if we can let any questions the teachers or students have come out first? Because I'm just worried we're going to run out of time again for that. Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Well, I understand that you're an advocate for the school. I'm looking at this model here, and I'm wondering what is in place if there's a conflict between the FCS fit and the school fit, because the model doesn't really reflect that there can be such a conflict. And so I'm curious, how do we resolve if there are potential conflicts there, especially in light of another slide up there that talks about direct appointment.
Well, there wasn't a slide about direct appointment. So I made the comment about direct appointment, that you request no direct appointment, but that is the superintendent's prerogative. That is written in board policy. So let me go back and see if I can answer your question about conflict. If between principal fit, we find 3 candidates, 2 to 3 candidates that I believe, and that our team believes is a good fit for Riverwood, and I bring 2 to 3 candidates for the yellow column interview, and conclusively we all say, none of these work, then we start over. I'm not going to just take somebody that doesn't seem to work for Riverwood. I've got to believe it. You have to believe it, that the person that, the 3 people or the 1 person that comes out of that is the right person. So there is that opportunity to start over. We're not going to just find a principal and put a principal in here that's not a good fit. Does that help you with your conflict issue? Can you clarify a little bit more about what the real concern is?
There have been instances where committees have seemed to make recommendations or talk about things, and then those decisions get lost, or the people in different positions seem to want to take things in another direction. So I'm wondering, basically, what assurances are there that what we're really recommending as a committee is not going to be, or rather is going to be taken into serious consideration. And I understand the importance of the prerogative of the superintendent, but they're just in the past have seemed to have been some inconsistencies.
Okay, I hear you. Try to eliminate the past, because the process is very different from the past, where there was really no screening on the front end other than a paper screening, and it was cursory at best. for the paper screening. This process is so much more rigorous through the blue column. Literally every one of the area superintendents who have taken candidates forward have said every candidate has been a viable, strong candidate for their school. So eliminate a little bit of the past from that factor. The other factor is in the past, if you sat on an interview committee, everybody gets a ranking sheet and everybody tallies their points and everybody puts their tally sheet into a secret envelope that's sealed and carried downtown. And then the whole committee sits around and talks about who voted. Did you vote for that person first? Did you vote for that person? We don't vote in this process. There is no vote by the committee at the yellow column. There is a very rich, open discussion at the table about the strengths of each of the candidates, the preferences for each of the candidates, but there is no vote that then could be upset by somebody else. There is no vote that then people could stand around and say, but I voted, and we all know that's happened in the past. I voted for this, well, why didn't this person get it? When I leave the room that day, there's not going to be a, here is our recommendation. That's not how it works this time. I hear everything you say, I take into consideration everything from the green column forward, and then it is my responsibility to make a recommendation from the candidates that come out of the table. Here's what I heard from the community. Here's what I believe is your area superintendent is the best candidate for Dr. Avosa to consider. If we get to the yellow part, there's not going to be a direct appointment. I'm never going to say there won't be a direct appointment, but my strong belief, given the Riverwood community and the turnover that you have had, this is my belief, that we will go all the way through the process to the end for board approval. That's going to be my very strong recommendation, is that we take this process all the way through to the end. I do want to remind you that your previous principal was a unanimous choice from the committee that served before. It was a unanimous choice. I was on it, and some of the people in this room were on that committee. So, even given the past, even given unanimous choices, sometimes people make personal choices about where they're going to go and if they're going to leave a school. I'm fully convinced. I've seen the process work. It is fairly new, but I have seen it, and I've seen it work very successfully. My commitment to you is that we make it work, and that I am listening with every little fiber in my inner ear about what's happening at Riverwood. And my commitment to you is to find the very best principal to take you forward, given what I know is happening in your future. It's going to take somebody right up there near the right hand of God. I mean, in all seriousness, this is a big, very important choice, and it's not something any of us take lightly. Okay?
Other questions for teachers or for teachers and students?
Anybody? Yes, ma'am.
You said the deadline, the first round was March 1st. How many applications how many pool, can you tell us how many are in the pool?
No, because we're not there yet. I think I heard we got about 120 applications for the principalship, but I don't know that. I wasn't involved with that.
And how many principal openings are there currently in Fulton County?
I have North Springs, Riverwood, and McLaren, which is a very different kind of school. That's our open campus.
Head principal. Principals?
Yes. Yes.
I hadn't heard North Springs.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm sitting there on North Springs.
Yes, Dr. Doobie decided to resign. She's had a lot of family issues. Her mother just passed away. And
okay, I just hadn't heard that.
Are there other high schools in the system?
Yes, Centennial is a vacancy. So Centennial, Riverwood, North Springs, and McLaren are vacant, are the high school vacancies. Seaborn Lee is an elementary vacancy. I believe that Sweet Apple, that principal's family has moved, so not Sweet Apple, I'm sorry. Susan Matskin is at Birmingham Falls.
So this process is interviewing principals, period, not just high school principals. So,
Yes, at the grade.
so out of that 100 and something, there would be a much smaller pool that have had experience in high schools. Is that fair to say?
I have no idea.
Because it's all encompassing.
Yes.
The applications you got.
And applicants, just to be clear, applicants aren't allowed to say, I'm only interested in the Riverwood job.
That is correct.
They have to apply for a principalship and go through the whole process and either accept or reject the job that they're offered, right?
Up to the blue, there is no distinction among schools. Through the blue column, there's no, we're interviewing you for X, Y, or Z. We're interviewing you at this point for Fulton County. Between the blue and the yellow, when we do our internal work about fit, Bruce, Pam, Deborah, all are a good fit for Riverwood. So then I reach out through HR and say, we're offering you an interview at Riverwood School. And candidates then can say, I'm not interested. But basically what they know is that they're applying for Fulton County. We're having some discussions at this point about maybe there's a need to do more work to identify vacancies. Riverwood has a lot of cachet in its name. It's a great school. It's a great opportunity for a principal. So is Centennial. McLaren has very specific needs. So while we're trying to attract people to work in Fulton County, because we all know, those of us who've worked in the county for, where's Pam, those of us who've worked in the county for a long time, you sign a contract with Fulton County. You don't sign a contract with Riverwood. So the idea is you're working for Fulton County first. And then we find the right fit for you within the school system. So, no, there's, at that point at the yellow, if I say to Bruce, Pam, and Deborah, do you want to, we're offering you an interview, and you say, I don't want to go to Riverwood, then I don't take you to Riverwood for candidacy interview. Make sense?
Do you think that...
I'm asking for clarification on the yellow column. The second bullet point says 90-day presentation based on the school profile. What I got from that is their first 90 days here,
That's
what they
correct.
would do.
That's correct.
Is that presented at the interview in front
Yes,
of
it
everyone?
is.
And then after that, the interviewers ask questions?
That's correct.
So it's double?
That's correct. There's an actual presentation that that person has to do their own work to figure out what it is about Riverwood that's important, and they have to present to you, here's what I'm going to do within the first 90 days. And you have a rubric that you use as interviewers to evaluate their performance.
And can our interview questions be based on that? Or is it separate?
You can do some follow-up questions to that, absolutely. The interview and the behavioral interview part, the questions there are derived from the survey and the focus group and the competencies. You're going to ask questions around those things that you said are most important. So it's not completely scripted because there is the opportunity for some follow-up questions, but we're really trying to dig and see, does this person meet the expectations of the school community?
Thank you.
Sure, good question.
Bruce?
And is that person at that point only applying for the Riverwood job, if they, or could they also the next day be interviewing for the North Springs job and the next day for the Centennial job? So they would have to...
Theoretically, they could. We've had a couple of situations like that where we've had very similar schools that had a vacancy because the fit is important. And what you all have said may be different from what the Centennial community has said about what they want and what McLaren has said and what they want. So I wouldn't take a candidate, I know I would not take a candidate that was a good fit for McLaren to an interview at Riverwood because the needs are totally different.
Right, but North Springs...
But North Springs and Riverwood, possibly, because there are some similarities.
Right. So I mean, you realize what you're possibly setting up there is there's a candidate that everyone on the committee absolutely falls in love with, and it turns out everybody at North Springs falls in love with that person, and then you have to choose who gets that person.
Yes, I do. That's why my blood pressure stays high.
Yeah.
I do.
Okay.
And
we're first on our list.
All right, other questions?
I have a question.
Yes, Deborah.
Every city and state has its own little nuances, and I know we get this pool of people 120 or whatever they are not just from this area, they're from everywhere.
Yes.
Okay.
Anywhere.
Right, exactly. If I'm not mistaken, I think Mr. Triola came from
Charlotte.
So, given that, do you give first priority to people that may understand this market, this area, more so than you would someone outside? Or what's your thought process on people here in Atlanta or people outside?
There's nothing in the gray column that has anything to do with where the person is from.
Or their background or the state or
No,
that type of thing. Because there's
not-
some states that work similar
Yeah.
to other states, and some states are totally different.
It's really about experiences. It's about the work that they have done. It's about their beliefs, because in that admin fit and in the written essays and the questions they answer, there's a great deal of discernment about what it is that that person has done, the actual work they've done, not what they wanted to do as a principal, but what work they've done, what are their beliefs, what are their priorities as a leader, and then that is what drives us, not did you work in Charlotte or did you work in Alaska. So there's no consideration for geography, if you will.
Yeah, it's not as much
Or priority for
yeah,
where
it's
they
not as
come
much
from.
geography as it is being familiar with a type of system. I mean, for example, you're going to this charter system, and are you looking for someone that knows a little bit about how that process works? I'm from Texas, so our system is totally different from what you might have here. So those are the kind of things.
So one of your top priorities there is strategic planning and understanding how that process works and the politics of that, establishes a strategic direction. That's going to be a key competency to have at this school because of what you have going forward, the work that you have to do going forward. So those are going to be key things that are happening with the screening and that happen at the table with the interview, is what is the depth of understanding of that work. Can the candidate, one of these candidates lead us forward with what we have going forward as a cohort 1 school, as a school that's got to undergo a massive rebuild, reconstruction, renovation, whatever it's going to be, and continue to keep expectations high, drive instruction to a high level, learning to a high level for all students, etc.
Crystal, did you have a question? I did. I wanted to know where in that process do we validate the information the candidates are providing? I might say that it was my idea to bring IB to Riverwood National Charter School, and I was the person who presented it to the board. Okay, I clearly knew who that was, but let's say I say that. I mean, where in that process do we validate what their experience is, what they've done, what they bring to the table?
Some of that happens at the gray, some of it happens at the yellow. There's a level of inspection at the gray, and then there's another level of inspection at the yellow column.
But that's not our role.
No, that's an internal. Good question.
I'm sorry. If we could, my last question, I promise. Focus on our role. The committee, the flaws before you've corrected a big one by allowing discussion. We weren't even technically allowed to discuss after it was over.
That's right.
And I think that's a huge improvement. The other thing was, we all had a question, and we all could only ask that question exactly the same way every single time, and with no follow-up, no, anything, no real dialogue between you and the possible candidate. And it's really hard to get to know somebody that way. So is there going to be any change in the way that we ask questions?
Yes.
Okay.
There is more openness at this point in those questions. However, it's not a free-for-all, because you do have to make sure that you have some control for legal purposes, that you can't give one candidate an advantage over another candidate by asking a question that's not related. All the questions have to relate back to the primary question. You ask a question, the candidate doesn't answer it really well, or you think, well, I'd like to know a little bit more about, and you can ask a follow-up question about an experience. You've said that you did so-and-so. Can you tell us a little bit more about the steps you took? And how did you involve parents? Or what voice did students have in that decision? If it's related back to the original question. You can't then say, okay, so you did that. Well, tell us about something else that you did that just gives that candidate a bigger advantage over the following candidates.
And what about asking questions about their presentation?
Yes, yes, you can dig around in the presentation. If it's related to the presentation, we'll ask some questions about that.
Is there a
So it is
time limit?
No.
No.
We try to schedule them in about an hour-and-a-half blocks. So it's a fairly long day. But the presentation is about a 15-minute presentation, and then there's follow-up to that, and then we've got about 45 minutes worth of Q&A through the behavioral part. So it's a much longer, and it's a much more connected interview. You do have the ability to converse, so to speak, with the candidate.
May I ask, how is the committee, the community representatives in the school of that group, how are they chosen? I know earlier you said 2 parents and 2 teachers.
Yes.
That was more the focus. When you get to the yellow where it says school and community representatives, is that specific group chosen in a special way, or?
Mr. Tesh and I will work together on selecting those folks to have your community representative. Your 2 parents and 2 teachers are on the yellow. That's from your governance council. Your charter requires, your current charter requires 2 parents and 2 teachers.
So there's not a student?
Yes, there will be a student, but your charter requires 2 parents and 2 teachers. So we have to meet the requirements of your charter, with a minimum of 2 parents and 2 teachers.
Follow-up question, just sort of to get to what Eileen's asking about. So we have to have a minimum of 2 parents and 2 teachers, but we'll have more because we will also have students.
And we have an HR representative in there as well.
So the 2 parents and 2 teachers that the charter requires, that's part of the group that you and Mr. Tash will figure out. We don't put forth people to be on the interview.
That's correct. You can express desire, and if you want to work through Martha to express that desire to Mr. Tesh, that's fine. Or if you want to go directly, probably would be nice to have an organized way, but it's not something you all need to take action on or vote on. If you want to, you can. You're a governance council.
So why don't we just leave it that if council members are interested in being part of that community representation on the interviews or the focus groups, do you want to email me or Mr. Tash? What would be your preference?
He wants you.
He wants you.
Well, I also think that'll help
Just send me a list, Martha.
That'll distinguish council members from everybody else that might be emailing Mr. Tash. So if anyone is interested in either focus group or interview, if you would let me know within the next week, because I think these are the interviews of end of April, right?
Yeah, one of the issues that we're trying to avoid is the April CRCT window, so that candidates who are assistant principals or principal anywhere in Georgia that gives the CRCT, they cannot be out of their building. So we're trying to avoid that window of time, so it's probably going to be 3rd week of April, something like that, where we'll look at scheduling the interviews.
Okay. All right, I do have a comment. Are there any other questions though?
Great questions. Thank you so much for that.
So, this is my comment. I know that this process has, the bus has left the station, and I'm willing to see what it yields. But there's been a lot of talk recently in the education field about the widget effect and the fact that we kind of teach teachers as one, you can fit over here, you can go fit over there, we're all the same. And it seems to me that, while we talk about how that's not the way we want to operate, that's exactly what we're doing with this principal search. And it just concerns me, if we were hiring a superintendent, I don't think we would want to hire a superintendent that responded to a generic ad that said superintendents wanted. I think that we would want somebody that elected to come to our specific community. And it just concerns me that we have this generic principal wanted advertisement where if I was in a job that I loved and I was very effective, I wouldn't jump in that pool. But if I saw an advertisement for a school that was innovative and had a lot of unique elements, I might be compelled to think about leaving where I am to go for that other opportunity. So that's my point in all of this is I don't think this process allows an individual school to get the best of the best because they're not enticing people who might otherwise choose to stay where they are. And I would be much better about it if that initial posting had been specific to our school. I think that we would have a better pool to choose from. But as I said, the bus has left the station. I don't want to presume that we won't get a great candidate through this process, but if we get to the end and we don't, I would certainly be advocating that we have a school-specific person.
Is the there anywhere on the application, you know, for those candidates to say, you know, I'm very interested in these schools or?
No.
Nor does it say what schools are even available.
No. It does not, and we've had considerable discussion about that. Here's the key link. Where we identify people who are good candidates for Fulton County, then we look at the specific feedback about Riverwood and see, are there candidates that are a good fit for Riverwood? And I certainly don't want anybody to presume we won't get good candidates, because it has worked in every situation thus far this year where we've had great candidates, very successful principals that have moved in. However, if we don't find a good fit, if there are not 2 or 3 good candidates that fit Riverwood, we'll start over. We won't even do this. If I can't bring you 2 or 3 candidates that are a good fit for Riverwood, we'll start over. If there is a desire to give that feedback forward, I'll certainly take it back myself to our talent division. But if you'd like to make that communication official, you certainly can. There is considerable discussion about that very issue.
I think you're right. You will probably come out with some really good candidates. But I gotta admit, I didn't think about what Martha said, and now upon putting it on the table, it's a really good point. Meaning that you will come up with a couple of good candidates, and we will probably end up with a very good principal. But the question, I think, or the statement I think she's saying is that, did we get the total pool? And you
I hear you.
Yeah, the total pool. And if people knew that this was Riverwood on the block, different people, more people that might be better than the ones that we're going to select may have actually stepped forward. That's a really good point.
I totally hear you, and I totally hear you, and I will take that feedback forward. There are two thoughts. There is the thought that I'm a veteran principal, I'm a successful principal, I'm not leaving my school unless I know for sure. However, those of us in the field know what the network's like. People know that Riverwood is vacant. There are principals who know that Riverwood is vacant.
That's true.
I have had personal contact from city principals about Riverwood.
Primarily in the state of Georgia or beyond? Is the network nationally?
I've not heard from anybody outside of Georgia.
Did they post it outside of Georgia?
No. We don't post anywhere other than on our website. I don't know if they do advertisement through Ed Week anymore, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that was kind of a little bit of my, maybe I wasn't clear.
It's posted on our website, on Fulton County's website, which is anybody can go to.
Okay.
There is a network of conversation. There's a network where people hear about schools that are open. But has the absolute right person heard it? I don't know.
And I don't want my comments to be construed to say that I don't think we can find a good principal through the process as it goes. I'm willing to go through the process and see what happens, but I think there's a flaw in the design. That's my personal opinion, and if we get to the end and we don't find a good candidate, then we might want to talk about whether we want to advocate for some changes that might bring the right person forward who otherwise is very satisfied where they are. And I think that's the opportunity that we're missing.
And Karen, why don't we post beyond our own website? Why not attract a bigger pool, more candidates?
That decision is not mine, and I'm not trying to disown my part of a team. That decision's not mine. That is the decision that our district has taken, that we post jobs on our website, that we take applications via our website. Sometimes schools that post or systems that post nationally are struggling to find candidates. And we have not found that to be the case, that we attract good candidates because we're a good school system. We're getting lots of attention as a school district. So we've had people that have expressed interest in coming to work for Fulton County. So I'm not saying that good systems don't post nationally, but for the most part, a lot of times when I get them, when headhunters reach out to me, it's from somewhere up in Minnesota or somewhere like that. You know, some small, or it's Chicago Public Schools. Who wants to go work in Chicago Public Schools? Nobody that I know. So those are, to me, those are where you see more of that push for a national dig-in, trying to find people because they don't get enough applications. So your point is very well taken. I will take it forward.
Thank you.
Convinced that we will find you a good one. My commitment to you is to find you a good principal. That's my commitment.
So I want to thank everybody for hanging in there so much longer than our original adjournment time. Does anybody have any further questions? Can people email you if they have further questions?
Yes.
And it's Coxie.
COXK.
COXK. At focusgroups.org.
Is there a deadline for us to choose our two parents and our
When
two?
do you need the people who are going to be on the panel?
It's not for a while,
Okay.
because that won't be until April.
And
I'm going to work with
focus groups won't
I'm
start
going to work
until.
with Mr. Tesh. Well, they're going to happen fairly soon.
But that's up to Mr. Bush. All right, so remember, let me know if you'd be interested in representing the Governance Council as well as your own constituency on either the focus groups or the committees. All right?
You never took action on a vice chair. Do we need to make a motion to put it on the next agenda?
Should we put the vice chair on the next agenda?
Yeah, I thought Jeremy.
Yeah, I thought Jeremy had volunteered.
I was worried when I saw that on the agenda.
That's what you get for not being here. And then I just do need, in the very last few minutes, okay, I'm still not clear, folks, about our motion about this issue. What is it? What is it that you're asking to be done?
Well, Karen, I guess the only gray area that remains is the fact that we are now a charter school. We are a charter school through June, I believe. And this has happened before where we've kind of gotten slapped down for making decisions based on who we are right now. And I guess we have an exception that we are considering of two students that are siblings that are out of district families. And we were wanting to consider them for admission because we now are a charter school and we can do that. And we're being told we can't do that. But we don't become a non-charter school until after that process of admission is done.
Sure. The admission of that student, when that student would matriculate into Riverwood, is after you are no longer a charter school. It would happen in August. So you're not a charter school that could have an MOU. There's no such thing as an MOU with a non-charter school. If you were going forward next year as a charter school, not part of the charter system, if you had done the work to renew your charter and gotten your charter renewed, remember that was a big part of your discussion, was how high the threshold is now to get a charter renewed. It's much more challenging than it has been in the past. So your decision was not to do the work to rewrite your charter and go for reapproval.
Right.
So,
but our decision was also based on the fact that we were assured under the new system
Right.
that all of the exemptions, basically everything within our charter that we wanted to preserve would be preserved.
Right.
And now we're being told, not just this time, but on other occasions, being told that that's not true. After we already took that vote.
You're dealing with a charter law. You're dealing with a Georgia statute with the MOU. It's not just your charter. We can't waive the Georgia statute for the MOU. That's not a flexibility that can be guaranteed to you through your charter.
I guess the only point I'm making though is that we relied on the county to give us the information, and that was omitted. You know, we weren't being told, oh, one of the things you're going to lose when you become a system charter versus the word charter is still in there. So all of a sudden under system charter, you don't get the same, the different state laws apply to you. And that wasn't really what was sold to us. That's
I want to piggyback after you digest what he just said, but just saying it differently. Is this an okay time?
Sure. Although y'all have some business I think you need to attend to.
We need to adjourn.
Okay, well.
Well, we have a few more seconds on this.
Okay.
We lost most of the teachers and the students. So.
The only question or the only concern I have with the interpretation that you just communicated, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I actually thought we worked under the same system until the end of the year, meaning that all votes would be the same, all processes would be the same. I didn't think we turned to the new system until August. June. Therefore, everything that should happen this year should be voted and mandated like it's been before. But it sounds like what you're saying is that because it's affected, it affects next year, our votes will have to coincide with the direction in which we're going. And I'm a little bit between, I'm probably more over here with Bruce, because I kind of thought we were still the same school until the end of May.
And in some cases you are. With this MOU, you cannot be. Because you will not be a charter school.
This year.
Well,
Okay.
this year you have students under an MOU.
Right, okay.
Because you're a charter school, you have students who are from outside of Fulton County. You have a lot of students from outside your attendance zone that were admitted this school year. From outside your attendance zone.
This
school year.
Right, but not this voting year.
Next school year, when those children would matriculate to Riverwood, enroll at Riverwood, you cannot have an MOU because you're not a charter school.
I get that.
So that, it makes it no.
And we're talking really new students.
That's
but
correct.
We're saying really what's missing. I'm sorry, Ms. Huff.
All right, I'm gonna
We're
have
saying
to-
sibling.
Yeah, well, I think you're
Said the word sibling.
We need to stick with the meeting until the meeting is adjourned, folks, and then we can have individual conversations. I'm really sorry.
Sorry,
to cut
Martha,
you
I'm
off.
sorry.
That's okay, no, I'm sorry to cut you off.
Well, I'm done with my question. It's one of those kinds of things where you're talking about the school system and then, this is not the school system, but the school timing and then the voting timing. It's just, it's a difference.
Yes.
Because now we're voting on something in this system that's going to affect next year and we're going to be out of the system. So I do understand. I was not under that impression. I'm a little bit over here with Bruce. I get it now, but I didn't get it at first.
One of the parts about making a big decision like you made is sometimes there are nuances. Sometimes there are pieces that nobody thought about.
Right.
Nobody thought about the MOU.
Right.
So I regret that you feel you were sold a bill of goods. That was never an intention of the district.
Anytime you
Well,
change something, that's going to happen.
Nobody thought about it. In fact, nobody thought about it until it came up, and there was discussion about what do we do about MOU. Oh, there is no MOU. There can't be an MOU. So there might be some more of those. My commitment, and I've talked with Martha about this, Mr. Tesh and I have talked about it, is let's engage in the discussion. There may be a few other nuances that we have to address as a group.
My impression was we were a charter school, and gee, now everyone in Fulton County has the opportunity to become a charter school.
No,
Because it's a charter system.
that is not correct.
Well, then we shouldn't call
We're
it
a charter system.
Well, we should change the name.
Talk to them about that.
Because it doesn't feel good.
All right, I think is there anything new that we need to talk about? All right, well, why don't we adjourn, and then we can, thank you very much for staying through. And I do have to leave. I've got to go do a Teacher of the Year observation, so I'm going to be here for about 5 minutes. Okay, so.
I know you want to talk.
Sorry.
Thanks again.